Okay. Oh, okay. There it is. Well, here we are. Let me make sure it's working. But yeah. Hi there. Thank you for tuning in and being here today. If you didn't already know, I'm here with fellow author Matt Lucas to talk about reading, writing, publishing, and more. Hi, Matt.
Hey.
Matt has written a number of stories, I think mostly in the fantasy genre. Is that right?
Yeah, fantasy, thriller. There's always a blend of fantasy, whether it's like
Sure.
paranormal, supernatural, something like that. There's usually a blend in there.
Including one of your most recent releases, which is called The Shadow Gospels, I believe.
Yes. Yeah.
But I'll let you tell him, or I'll let him tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. But I'm
Yeah.
very grateful that Matt has graciously agreed to be with us here today and answer some more questions. Now I do have some questions prepared for everyone, but let's also make this an interactive discussion. So if you're watching this today, if you're a fan, a reader, an aspiring author, whatever, anything like that, then post your questions in the chat about reading, writing, publishing, fantasy fandom, or any of those topics. We want to hear from you too. Yeah, so here we go. So Matt, for those who haven't heard or maybe who aren't familiar yet, can you give us a quick overview of your major works? I know that Shadow Gospel is your most recent release, but you've written some things too, is that right?
Yeah. So I have the Shadow Gospels, which is kind of an apocalyptic series. So the first book just released back in end of April, early May. So that's been really, really fun to be a part of. It's through World Castle Publishing, which also picked up another more of a high fantasy series, which is called Chronicles of Yeshu, Fellowship of Faith, which is a kind of my ode to C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien.
Just the word Chronicles makes it sound like that.
Exactly.
In a good way.
Exactly. Chronicles and Fellowship. I wanted to kind of give my ode to them. So those are two series. The first book, Shadow Gospels, already released. No, that's okay. Shadow Gospels already released. Chronicles of Yeshu is coming out towards the end of the year. I have some smaller publications, little anthologies and things that I was involved with. One of which was kind of a cool story. I wrote a story called Neo Exodus, which ended up getting in World of Myth magazine, but I didn't even know too much about it, the submission process at the time. But I had previously taken it to another publisher called Cohesion Press, and I was a finalist for the Netflix series Love, Death, and Robots.
Really?
Didn't make the final cut. I was a little bit too long-winded for those are sort of short snippet episodes. But I didn't even know when I had submitted to Cohesion and made it really far in their process, and I'm making just before the final cut. But that was still kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, it's a bigger claim to fame than I have. I'm actually trying to Google that now because I haven't watched that series, but it sounds like something I'd be interested in.
Yeah, it's got some non-Christian themes in it for sure, but that's anything secular.
They have like you said you were a finalist. Is it like you were just competing to write, or like they showcase authors, or how does that work?
They have a relationship with the producer of Love, Death, and Robots, and he in the first season he went through and took a couple stories from some of their anthologies, so one or two stories, and once you get into the anthology, I think they took about 7 to 10 stories. 2 would be taken from that 7 to 10. So I was just missed the cut of the 7 to 10.
Wow. Okay.
So
close, but still a claim to fame, almost. Hey,
still fun. I had no idea that it was happening at the time. But
awesome. Hey, I think you and I, and probably a lot of our viewers out there, are just at the beginning of our writing careers. That's a theme we come back to a lot. So I mean. You know, it takes time to build these things from the ground up, and it takes time for people to find out who we are and for us to get our stuff out there. But that's an awesome place to start from.
Yeah, absolutely. And it took a long time. I started writing when I was 23, and that opportunity came when I was 27. And the Shadow Gospels didn't even get published until 31. So
yeah, a lot of people. I mean, and there are people older than us who who didn't publish their first book till much later. So yeah. Now I'm just curious because you mentioned robots. Is it fantasy or also sci-fi, or do you do a blend of both?
I do a blend of both. I tend to lean more towards fantasy, so things like urban fantasy, kind of the angels, demons kind of deal, paranormal, supernatural. Sci-fi, sometimes I struggle with sci-fi a little bit more than I do with fantasy. Fantasy is a little bit more familiar to me. But I like to take a lot of inspiration from like thrillers or
Yeah.
big grand epics and put them into a paranormal context. Sci-fi, I want to do the same thing. I don't feel like I'm as skilled in that genre, but there's been a couple of times where I've kind of been able to
There's
be fairly successful.
certainly some overlap there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Great. How did you get interested in fantasy and sci-fi in the first place? Do you have favorite books or movies or anything that inspired you? I know you mentioned Tolkien and Lewis. That's the big one, obviously.
Yeah, Tolkien and Lewis were definitely the ones that that I really enjoyed growing up in terms of books.
I mean, you have to mention them as far as fantasy, like
Yeah,
everyone says it, but that's because they're the best.
exactly. So they were big inspirations on me. But really, where a lot of my sort of the fantasy thought process came into play was I'm a huge I was a comic book guy when I was a kid. So like Batman, Superman, those are blends of sort of fantasy and sci-fi and things like that.
I didn't realize that, but if you didn't know, I'm a big comic book guy too. So we have a lot of comic book. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like Batman was always kind of my big, my favorite superhero of all time. I loved all the movies.
I was going to ask who's your favorite. Batman's a classic.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other one, it was another DC property, actually came out when I was like kind of a teenager, which I think brought a lot of the paranormal and supernatural blend into my writing, was the old Keanu Reeves Constantine movie.
Okay, I actually have not seen the movie. I know it's the character of Constantine. I haven't watched that movie.
Yeah, there was a movie that came out, and so that it was very much this urban fantasy.
I know it exists. I just haven't seen it.
Yeah, and it kind of brought a lot of different ideas to fruition for me. So those were kind of the big ones I can think of.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it's spoiler warning. I did go on your site and read the sample of some of your, I guess the free sample you had with Shadow Gospels, and
yeah,
that first chapter I was like it's almost superhero-ish, like
yeah,
but like through a fantasy lens kind of. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I like blending those together. That's cool. Yeah, I mean everything you're saying so far is like right up my alley. So
yeah,
I'm a fan. What are you reading right now? Anything interesting?
Yeah, there's two. I've been on a Lewis kick. So obviously I read the fantasy, sci-fi, all that kind of stuff, and the fiction. But I do have a really deep interest in Christian apologetics.
Okay.
So Mere Christianity. I've actually never read Mere Christianity,
really,
and I've never read the Screwtape letters.
As a Lewis fan, I mean they're fiction. Well. One's nonfiction. I guess Screwtape Letters is technically a fiction, but it's more theological.
Right. Yeah, I'd never come across those, or I just never even knew that those were his works. And my wife, surprisingly, we just moved and we were going through boxes of books that she had, and I was like, oh wow, I never saw this book from Lewis. So I'm just starting reading those. I've been a little bit bogged down with writing projects and work projects and things like that, but I want to dive into those.
That's awesome. No, yeah, Lewis has a lot. I've read a good chunk of his nonfiction, but not all of it. I keep finding more I haven't read, and now I can't remember which I've read and I haven't. I'm like, it's all good. If I haven't read it, I probably heard it quoted somewhere, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really cool. I was going to ask you. Well, you touched on this already. Who are the biggest influences on your writing? Which I know you talked about who inspired you or what works inspired by you, but is there any like specific author that you've tried to emulate consciously, or any story that specifically try to model yours after?
Yeah, so what actually the first iteration I had of the Shadow Gospels was an absolute mess, which I'm sure all authors can empathize with. It was just a mess. It was big. I had not defined my style yet. And George R.R. Martin, the Game of Thrones books.
Okay.
That POV style, I came across. I started to watch a show, and I didn't realize it was based off of a book series. I started to read the book series, and I loved it. But there were a few things about Martin that, while he's a great storyteller, I can find him, like, he'll describe a table or like a castle for like 3 pages, and I kind of lose my train of thought. And what I liked from another author was Dan Brown, because he was snappier. And so I tried to take like the POV style of Martin and the quick short chapters of Brown and try to meld them into kind of my own style.
Interesting. Okay. I haven't read Martin. When you say POV style, do you mean like focusing on different characters' POVs at different times?
Yes.
Because I know he has an ensemble cast, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And from your first couple of chapters, it seems like you do too.
Yeah.
That's cool. I do the same thing. I mean, I feel like it's popular today to have, multiple different characters coming together in a team or whatever. But yeah,
Right.
it's cool.
Yeah, yours is kind of the superhero Avengers. They're all from different spots, and they all
Yeah. They're. I mean, someone told me that my first book felt like all the Marvel movies with the Avengers, like all the Phase 1 movies with the Avengers combined, and I was like, hey, it's long because I'm trying to tell everyone's origin story and then get them to come in together.
Right.
But so I'm working on cutting it down. But yeah, that's the idea. Have 5 or so flawed main characters, and they ended up having a common goal together. I mean, it certainly wasn't original to me. I mean, the ensemble cast is a thing these days, and the found family arc, but I'm still a sucker for it, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. It works.
Cool. Okay. Well, yeah. Great. We have a couple comments in the chat.
Sure.
Christopher, who some also know from Twitter, is watching on, and he said urban fantasy is cool. He loves the Song of Ice and Fire. Martin's multi-POV storytelling is masterful. Nice parallel arcs between POV characters. Maybe I should add it to my list. I've been hesitant because of some of the things I've heard about the content and themes of those books. But
yeah,
I'll never say never. I'm trying to broaden my horizons and read, and just stay abroad of what's out there. So what's out there. So yeah, cool. Well, again, ask your own questions in the chat, Christopher, or anyone else who's watching. We'd love to hear from you. But Matt, I also wanted to ask you, how do you find the time to write? I mean, I know actually we were chatting a little before we went live. I know you have a day job. You're married. Whenever I asked anyone, I started asking people in some of these interviews, what's the hardest thing for you about writing? And I changed the question a little bit because almost everyone says the hardest thing is finding the time. So let me ask you, how do you find the time to dedicate to this craft of yours that, maybe provides a little bit of income, but probably isn't your full-time career yet? Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's tough because you have a lot of, I wear a lot of hats. Husband, I'm going to be a dad in October, so that's coming.
I didn't know.
Yeah, thank you. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, thanks. And then dad to a golden retriever who's 8 months old, and there's a lot that just happens in life.
Yeah.
For me, what I try to do is a lot of it comes down to just calendar management and understanding where I have breaks in my day. Now, I'm really fortunate. Like, I work from home. Very blessed from that standpoint. I kind of have the flexibility with work to make my own schedule. So my calendar just has different blocks. I live out of my calendar, and I have different blocks built in. So, hey, I have a meeting from, for example, today I had a meeting from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. And then I had another meeting at 10:30. Well, in that 30-minute window, I had a break. My wife was doing some errands. The dogs were sleeping. I was like, okay, I'll either jump in and write, or I'll take some notes and just try to think through and brainstorm what's coming next in the story, and just try to find those little windows throughout the day. And that's the best way to do it, is just have an organized calendar. And it doesn't hurt to have a wife who kind of reminds you, and having a spouse, I think, who understands your passion.
That's good.
And will say to you, like, I know you need to do this. I know this is important to you. Let me give you some time, and kind of negotiating from that, some responsibilities from that standpoint. My wife and I have settled into kind of a good rhythm that way. So that's something that I think is really key as well.
That's awesome. It's good to have that support. I know it's a blessing.
Absolutely.
Are you one of those people who has to write like a certain time of day, like early in the morning is your best work, or at night, or is it just whenever you have time, whenever you can fit it in?
Yeah, whenever I can fit it in. If you had to ask me, my favorite thing to do is get up early in the morning. My golden retriever wakes up at like 7 or 7:30, depending on the day. My wife's pregnant, so she sleeps past that time frame. So what I like to do is I love to get my morning cup of coffee, take the dog out. We've got a nice little fenced backyard. I'll sit on the patio and I'll let her go run and do her thing and play and all that stuff with my laptop, cup of coffee. And that's my ideal state. That doesn't happen very often in life. So it's a lot about just kind of finding the windows and making sure the creative juices are flowing.
Yeah, no, I get it. I'm in a similar boat sometimes. I have an almost 2-year-old, so I'm just a little bit past where you are. And I mean,
Right.
I like to be able to do things in the morning, but he wakes up when we wake up. So
Right.
it's usually, my time is now usually in the evenings after he goes to bed. So
Right.
I get it. But I'm also an organized person. And I'm not saying one is better than the other. 'Cause I know in writing we kind of talk about plotting versus pantsing versus flying by the seat of your pants, and some people just kind of do it when the burst of inspiration hits them, and that's great for them. But I mean, and maybe when I was younger I could have done that, but these days I'm like, you know, I have a job, I have a family, I don't have as much free time as I used to. I have to be disciplined and organized with the free time I have. That's for me. That's the only way I get anything done. But
yeah, it's the discipline's huge. It's the key.
It is, and I mean, even when you have free time, it's easy to just, you know, read comics or watch a movie or show. I mean, it's easy to want to decompress and turn your brain off. But I'm glad that you're using that to do something, you know, important and do what your calling is. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Discipline and accountability; those are the big two.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's not anything revolutionary. I mean, it's true because it works, and it's still profound because while it's a simple answer, it's hard to put into practice, and that's why we still need to hear it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Very good. What about? I mean, that's obviously a challenge. Is time management and such like that. But what about like when it comes to the craft of writing or editing, the actual writing process and such? What's the hardest part of the process for you and your stories?
I think for me, and I had to train this out of myself, and it's kind of that ugly monster that I have to push down every once in a while. I have a tendency to write things that don't move the plot forward. So I'm currently working on the Shadow Gospel sequel, and I just went through a chapter, and I'm like, this chapter, it's like the writing style is the same. It feels like my voice. I like it, but it doesn't move the plot forward. And we only have I think the publisher I'm working with, they have 100 to 110,000 word limit for any book. So I'm kind of looking at that and going, I need to be efficient in how I'm telling this story, and have to be concise in the words that I'm using. So I had a whole chapter that was like, this doesn't move the plot forward. It doesn't move my character from A to B at all. And I have to kind of hedge against that feel, because you're like, oh, I want to tell this part of the story because I think it's important and it has a good message. But maybe I can, instead of putting that in the novel, I can put it into a blog on my website for someone to read, or I can do something else with it if it doesn't move the plot.
Would you say you're an overwriter then?
Yeah, from time to time I can be. I try to keep things concise, but I don't think there's a lot of fluff in my style. I don't know if you caught that when you read kind of this short sample.
I wouldn't say it was overly fluffy, no.
Yeah, so I don't think there's a lot of that, but it's telling, I wouldn't say irrelevant, but telling tangential, like pulling on tangential threads. Yeah. That maybe don't need to be pulled on.
You're preaching to the choir here. No, well, I mean, I'm in the same boat, also trying to learn that. If you didn't know, and today's this interview isn't about me, but my project for the past year or so has been trying to cut my novel down to about 125,000 or even less, probably. I mean, at one point my draft was close to 200,000, and because like I said, I have an ensemble cast and I'm trying to tell their story, and also tell how they come together, and I've cut a lot out of it. I still need to cut more. I talked to an agent and they were like, no one's going to take that, so and you need to cut it down to closer. So it's brutal work, but I mean if you can save yourself the work in the drafting process, that's rather than editing after the fact, that's great. Or maybe you're one who drafts the whole thing first, realizes it's super long, and then cuts out. What do you think? Maybe a bit of both?
Yeah, so I originally, the first, again, very similar experiences, but my first iteration of the Shadow Gospels was 178,000 words. So it was like, really, it was a behemoth. And I literally scrapped the entire thing. I kept some elements of the story, but I literally just threw the draft away. I only kept it just so I can kind of like cross-reference some details, because I just really didn't like it. Yeah, so it was.
I'm like, it's my baby. Like I worked so hard on that.
Yeah, it was super tough, and I was like, and the reason it happened was I reached out to an agent who was a Christian fiction agent,
Mhm.
asked them for some advice. They're from Pittsburgh as well, so it kind of worked out. And he basically gave the same feedback. You've got to be between 70 and 100,000 words, and that's just the nature of the business if you want to pursue the traditional route, which I did.
Mhm.
And I scrapped the entire thing. And when I drafted the now first iteration of this novel that's been published, I just made sure that I was trying to stay concise throughout. And that's helped me a lot.
Yeah.
And I still go through and I still cut down, but instead of 175 to 200,000 words, most of my manuscripts average 80 to 95.
That's a big difference.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard, and I'm resonating with you because I'm still in that same boat myself.
Yeah.
Comments also saying it's a struggle of overwriters, and concise writing is hard. I actually, just yesterday, I gave a presentation on my work. I was telling you, I'm a content writer at work about concise writing in the business world, and I mean, it's hard for all of us because it's just not.
Right.
I mean, I shouldn't say everyone, but because some people are maybe on the shorter side by nature, but those of us who are writers by trade often have a lot of work to say, and we like to be wordy and go on and want to tell a story. But yeah, that's tough. I'm still in that boat myself, still working towards that goal, but
yeah, it takes time.
Yeah, I'm just curious. You talked about your process. How long did it take you first to write the first draft, and then to write it again from scratch? How long did both of those take you?
Yeah, so I started writing the very first draft at 23, and I scrapped it at 20.
And you said you're about 30-ish now?
I'm 31. I'm 31 right now. So I started at 23. I scrapped the first draft because it took me like 4 years to write at 26 or 27. And it literally only took me a year to write the second one.
Okay, but that's still like 5 years of work in there.
Yeah.
5 years of work before publishing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Then it took another I think 3 or 4.
Sure. No, so I mean, I could come back to this in some of my talks too, but we need to writers play the long game. It's not rarely, if ever, is there a path to overnight success.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's usually hard work after hard work after hard work. Yeah, one of our audience members, who happens to be my lovely wife, Rachel. I appreciate your honesty about having to scrap a book and start over in order to tell a story. That is so hard. Yeah.
Yeah, that was tough. I felt like a complete failure. I mean, I really did.
Yeah, that's I would too. I haven't scrapped mine. I've cut it down significantly, but I've never just scrapped the whole thing and started over. I feel like
well, yours. I've read some of your say like yours is much better than what mine was. For sure.
I don't know about that, but I mean, well, if so, it's because I've worked on it for so long. I've been working. I mean, I started my first draft over 10 years ago, but anyway, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of reluctance to throwing something away like that you've worked hard on, even if it's not good. So I'm like, I've worked with it since then, but I've never just thrown away the whole thing and started from scratch. So that's hard. That's hard.
It was very hard, very tough.
But you've learned from it, and now you have a published book, and one you're happy with, I assume.
Yes, very, very happy, very excited with it. Got some good feedback so far from some friends. And people that have been reading. So
I know 5 years or 8 years sounds like a long time. I mean, I'm close to the same. Actually, I just turned 32, but I'm I mean, looking back, it's when I was 23, I'm like, it seems like so long ago. And if I look 8 more years in the future, it seems like a long time. But I mean, it's worth it if it's what you want to do, and if you care this much about your book and about putting out this story in a good and quality way that will reach people, that's what you got to do.
Yeah, that's all it comes down to. And I think like that was for me the motivation. There's a scripture that I always kind of reference, like anything you do to the glory of God, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And that's kind of how I've approached my writing journey. So anything I do, like I could write a bunch of stuff that's maybe appeals to the masses, but so what? If it's not God glorified, it's not worthwhile. So like when I looked at how my publishing journey and wanting to tell this story, I kind of sat back and just said, if it helps one person, hopefully it helps more than one, right? If it teaches someone something, or gets them to open their Bible, or gets them to think about Christ in a different way, like that's great. And however much work goes into that, that's kind of the whole point, So I think when you level set and you have expectations like that, and you don't come in like, I need to be the next Stephen King, I need to be the next George R. R. Martin, I need to be the next C.S. Lewis, you're probably going to fall flat and you're going to be disappointed all the time.
Yeah, I think it was Lewis who said, we don't need more Christian books, we need more Christians writing good books. So
yes.
Yes, it's good. Like I'm glad that you're working your faith into your story, but like you also want to make it good. There's
exactly.
I think we would all acknowledge there's some cheesy and or bad Christian fiction out there.
Yes. Yes.
And it has a reputation for whatever reason. I mean, we could go into that. But Christian fiction has a reputation of being tame or like left behind or whatever. But there's you want to make it good. And so that's there you go. This is a side note also, but I meant to ask you earlier when you were talking about like Christian urban fantasy. Have you read like Ted Dekker and Frank Peretti and those guys?
I've read some Ted Dekker. I have. It's funny, kind of the origins of the whole Shadow Gospel series came from me reading the back book cover of one of the Left Behind books.
Huh. Okay.
And so kind of having a little bit, and I never read the actual series itself.
It's what it is.
But I would research it, and because I was intrigued with it, but I never really read the books. I never it wasn't ever a series that I could get into. And in researching, I was like, I want to make an alternative to this that is more realistic, a little more harrowing. It's a little bit more grisly to what the real world actually looks like.
Not so tame. Yeah.
Not so tame, a little bit more like, hey, if this apocalypse is happening, this end of the world is happening, it's not going to be pretty, it's not going to be tame, it's going to be a little bit brutal, it's going to be gritty, it's going to be, so I kind of wanted to take like the vibe of the Dark Knight series, and apply that to like this apocalyptic narrative. So it's just kind of funny that you brought up Left Behind, because that was one of the, not really an inspiration, but one that I kind of like pulled from that gave me the initial idea.
Almost the counter inspiration, like I want to do better than this. Yeah.
Right.
Makes sense. No, that's cool. Yeah. Dekker, Dekker has put out a lot of books. I've read. I haven't read all because there's so many.
Right.
He has some good stuff. He has some weird stuff too. When you're that prolific, I think they can't all be winners. But
right.
As far as like Christian supernatural fantasy, like urban fantasy thriller, I feel like he and Peretti are like the guys. And I like at least some of Ted Dekker stuff. So that's cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I asked you about your biggest struggle or weakness. What's the biggest strength in your writing, do you think, or what's one thing that your stories do really well? Now you already talked about how you kind of turned that weakness into a strength, or you're learning the discipline of writing short, but any other strengths that you do really well?
Yeah, I think I struggle a lot with some of the self-doubts. I'm sure is very easy to empathize with any writers that are listening. But I think for me, the feedback that I've received from folks that have read it, diversity of characters, having a lot of different voices and interesting voices. I think I'm able to dive into different personas pretty well and offer a diversified voice for those reading from that POV style.
How many main characters do you have, would you say? Or how many POV?
There's probably 8 or 9.
It's a lot. Are they all like equally developed, or is it some are like I don't know, first tier, second tier kind of thing?
Yeah, I would say there are probably 4 or 5 that are first tier.
Okay.
And then there are a few that are kind of still developing. This is going to be a longer series. So I feel like I have, and there's going to be times where people are going to sort of, I don't want to say disappear, but they won't be as big in the narrative for certain stages. So everyone will kind of get their day in the spotlight.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I was hoping to build it out over the course of however many books.
I think readers of fantasies these days understand the concept. I mean, I know there's long series like the Wheel of Time that have done things like that.
Yeah. Right. So that's kind of what I'm going to try to do. But I think the diversity of characters, I mean, of my main characters, I've got an American vigilante, sort of a Bruce Wayne-esque, James Bond-esque kind of character. I've got a Muslim woman who has like weird prophetic visions that she doesn't understand. I've got a child soldier in the Sudan, just to give you kind of like a varied group. And then there's the son of the French president, who's like a soldier and like a military commander. Like it's kind of a varied voice. And another one who I'd say is probably in the top five is a supernaturally gifted exorcist from London. So there's varying voices, cultures, religions, things like that, and trying to empathize with those types of characters as you're writing their journey. I think that's something that I would consider or have been told is a strength.
Good. Yeah. Who would you say is your favorite character if you had to pick one? Or is there that means the most to you? Or I know
it's fun. It's funny because he's actually probably the primary villain of the first book is Pascal. So if anyone reads, he is the French president's son. He's very complex. He kind of comes on very strong as this very dark and foreboding figure, but you start to see cracks in his character. And when I say cracks in his character, not in a bad way, like you actually see some intrinsic good come from him. And I think he's very conflicted because of pressure from his father, pressure from this grandiose birthright that he's supposed to inherit, what he's supposed to do with that birthright. And so he's kind of a example of parental pressure.
Sure.
And someone kind of how that forces someone against their nature. So I think he's very complex.
Okay. We have a question from the audience. Did you have to do research to help create all those POVs?
Yes, tons of research.
Like, can you tell us about your process there or how that worked or anything?
Yeah, so I kind of started with wanting to. So the Shadow Gospels for me is a bit of an evangelistic tool. So I like to use the story not to beat you over the head and preach at you,
sure,
but to give you different perspectives. And I want other people who are non-Christians to read this. So I want to give an atheistic perspective. I want to give, I want to give a Muslim perspective on not so much on like Christianity, but on the world. How does a Muslim see the world? How does an atheist see the world? How does an agnostic see the world? And so a lot of research into those faith systems is a lot of what I did. And then a lot of it actually was engaging with people that had those backgrounds. So speaking with people in my life, whether they're friends or colleagues or whatever, learning more about how do like what?
You can call that firsthand research, like resources,
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of just understanding other faiths, understanding other perspectives on the world, talking to people that have those perspectives and why do they think the way that they think. I have a friend who he's kind of agnostic, but I remember talking to him about why he came to that conclusion or how he came to that conclusion and some of the emotion behind that. Sure. And then understanding that and then seeing like how I can build that into a character so someone like him can read the book and empathize with somebody. So they still receive a lot of the good things, right? The things that are pointing towards Christ in the book, but it doesn't hammer them over the head and they can still enjoy the content.
Yeah. And for all of us, I feel like the our beliefs, whether Christian or Muslim or atheist, there's an emotional component too. I mean, there's always, we try to be logical sometimes. I do, but there's always an emotional, personal component that's there, at least in part. And it's important to understand those things. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's good. That's diversity of thought, and it's hard to present it well. I've tried to do that with my characters. Sometimes I have a hard time running the ones who think differently from me. I have to get heads, and it's a skill that, again, it must be practiced and researched and stuff.
I think part of it's process and research. The other part that I would kind of point out is trying to find ways to empathize. So for example, if I'm writing, about a Muslim character who, actually a better example would be like an atheist character who's grappling with the idea of like the problem of suffering. Can I put myself into those shoes? Like, have I ever gone through something that I just question, like, why would God let me go through that? That doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't feel right. Like, why is there evil? Why is there pain? Why is there suffering? So I can empathize with that person,
Yeah.
and I can understand their experience. Then how do I make that into a character, and how would that character speak?
Yeah. That's honestly the first step to finding common ground, whether in fiction or in other areas of life, but
Right.
just reaching out to people with different views, different ideologies. That's
Right.
just, yeah. Well,
For
I'm
sure.
glad you're doing that, and I'm trying. And you're. It sounds like you're doing it well in your fiction, which is what we need.
Hopefully.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds like you're making some good steps. What's one writing or editing tip you can offer that maybe most people overlook or don't know?
This is one thing that I learned when I scrapped my manuscript. If you are reading your own manuscript and you find it difficult, it's probably because you don't like your own story. And that was a really tough experience for me. But when I was going through, I had finished my novel. I remember being like, I think I was 26 or something, super excited. Like, I finished my first book. I texted all my friends, like, my book's done. Let me send it to you, whatever. And I would send it to my friends, my family, beta readers, whatever. One key indicator is that people weren't finishing the book, right? So it's a clear indicator that something was not drawing them in. And then I was like, well, that's not a big deal. They're busy. Let me read it. I'll go through and edit before I go and start pitching to agents or publishers or whatever. And it took me almost a year and a half to even get through the editing process because I didn't like to read it. I dreaded opening my own manuscript to read it. And I think that was a key indicator for me that it was like, this needs to be scrapped. This has to go because I don't even like it. Like, I can't physically get through it. And if you're a writer and you're going through, like, maybe you don't have to go to the extreme like I did where I just totally scrap something. But if you go through and you're like, there's pieces of this I really don't like ask yourself some questions. Does this move the plot forward? I really struggle with that sometimes. Is this something that I feel like the reader needs to know? Or is it something that I just kind of want to tell because it's been in my brain? And asking those questions of yourself is going to help you understand what to pull from your manuscript.
Yeah, no.
And what to take out of it.
You're again speaking my language, or telling me things I need to hear probably because I've been in what I call editing purgatory, and
Right.
I say it's because I've been through it so many times now, but I'm just like it's hard for me. I mean I've been dragging my feet and I guess procrastinating on editing my first book because I'm tired of it now. And I like the story, or I think I do, but I'm like it's like I've been through it so many times, and I want to be done with it. That I'm tired of going through it, but I need to. And there are times when I've been like, yeah, I think I can take this and that out, but yeah.
And there's a difference between being a good storyteller and being a good writer.
Very much so.
That's the hard part. So you may have a masterful story. And I felt like I had, even in that first draft, I felt like I had a masterful story, but I was a bad writer. Like, I didn't know how to efficiently and concisely tell that story. And so I think, that's why when I say I scrapped the manuscript, I kind of kept it on the side, and I would go back and I'd reference it, but I did start a completely new draft. But there were pieces and parts of it that, have persevered through to actual publishing. Like, the story itself was good, but it was the efficiency and the conciseness on how you tell that story and the craft of writing and communicating effectively. That's the difference.
Okay, now, yeah, and for me, it's also because I started my first draft, I guess 10, 12 years ago now, and so I know I was much more wordy then, and much much more. I was not. I was not a good writer, at least compared to now. Like my second book, I drafted it much later, and I was like, oh, this is much better. But now, even editing my first draft, which I've edited several times, but I'm just like, there's still remnants of this old writing style that I find a little cringy now, because it's yeah. So
oh yeah, we're writers are really good at making ourselves cringe.
Well, that's yeah. Rachel said that's really good advice about reading your story. Christopher says it's like being done reading a story on repeat and wanting to go to the next one because it's new and mysterious. That's how I feel.
Yes.
All the times. Yeah. But no, that's good advice that we need sometimes. It's it's they say kill your darlings. I guess it is, and it's hard to do, but sometimes we need to. Yeah. Okay.
And don't be afraid to take a break, actually. So Chronicles of Yeshu, the fantasy series that is coming out at the end of the year, I needed a break from the Shadow Gospels. I was writing the sequel. I had gone through editing that book and all this different stuff. And I just I need a break. I need to step back from this. And I wrote Chronicles of Yeshu just in the meantime. And it doesn't mean I discarded the Shadow Gospels, because obviously it's been published. I'm going back to it. I'm writing a sequel. But I think sometimes building fresh ideas makes you a better writer too. And you'll find elements that you'll want to pull from one manuscript into another or something like that.
Yeah, that can happen. Okay. We're getting some great comments and questions and discussion feedback. I'm having a good time. Yeah, but I want to move into asking you about publishing. And
yes.
I know you've named out your publisher, and you told us you went through the traditional process, which I wasn't sure if you had done self-published or traditional, but I was going to ask. But how did you know which path was best for you? How did you find a publisher? Can you tell us about how that process worked for you?
Yeah, so I, at the encouragement of my wife, I'd never really thought about doing anything with publishing, but she was like, research the business, figure out what to do. So when it came to traditional versus self, I found I really admire self-published authors. I'll just put that out there first.
It's hard work.
It's a lot of work. And I was in the middle of my career. There was just so much going on in my life at that point. I was like, it's a great path and you reap a lot of benefit from it. But I was like, if I can get somebody else to do a lot of the hard work and all I can do is just write, it just appealed to me a little bit more.
I know that is the appeal of it in many ways.
Yeah.
And so it was potentially a broader audience, depending on what kind of agency you go with. But
right, exactly. So I did the whole agent thing. So I searched for an agent. I ended up signing with an agent, actually. Back in 2019, I signed with an agent, and not a lot was really happening. We made it to the last round with Penguin Random House.
Wow.
And the book is a lot of international. So it takes place a lot in Europe. It takes place not really much in America. There's one American character, mostly European, African, Middle Eastern characters. And they're like, we're not really sure how this is going to appeal and our distribution to get it across. If we want to get it in the European market, this is the American imprint, or if we want to get it into the EMEA or the North African or Asian market, it's kind of going to be difficult. So there's always a business component to going through that process. And your manuscript may be good, it may be very high quality, but people are trying to market things or trying to sell things. So we didn't make it with Random House. We tried a couple other ones, didn't really work out, never really made too much traction beyond that point. And the agency shut down during COVID.
Oh, yeah.
They shut down their fiction division because what was selling during COVID was medical books and nonfiction, self-help stuff, a lot of that
messed
stuff.
Everyone up in a lot of ways, but yeah, that's
So what ended up happening is the publisher was like, "Listen, we're going to do," or I'm sorry, the agency was like, "We're unfortunately not going to be able to move forward." So I was back on my own, and I started to do research on traditional publishers that don't require an agent for you to sign. Because working with that agent, I learned a lot about the business. Now, I wasn't by a literary agent by any stretch of the imagination, but I kind of knew what to look for in a contract. I knew how to identify what was predatory and what was legitimate. And so I did some research on traditional publishers that did require an agent, and I found a couple of them. And I honed in on a few that I really kind of felt strongly about. They had experience publishing Christian fiction with that paranormal twist, kind of like mine. So I found World Castle. I really liked them. I went through their contract. Yeah, World Castles are based out of Florida. So I did my due diligence. I had a lawyer review when they sent the contract. I went to a lawyer, which is I always recommend doing that if you don't have a literary agent. Like have an IP, an intellectual property lawyer, go through, look at it. It costs like $300, but it's worthwhile to make sure you're not wasting your money.
Yeah.
And they performed the exact function that a traditional publisher should. They covered all the upfront costs. The royalty split's very favorable for us. I mean, it's a really, the quality of the book is great. The editing process was really great. The people were very friendly. I've had a very good experience with them. There wasn't any red flags. There were a couple things in the research I was kind of like, okay, let me dig in a little bit further. I connected with the authors who had been published by them. So I just reached out to them on Twitter, LinkedIn. They had a lot of great things to say. And that was kind of the process that I went through. So there is that option for those of us that want to go through the traditional route, but like agents are really niche and they're very picky and they have to be because that's their business. But if you're writing something that maybe doesn't have broad appeal, kind of like mine, it's a little bit more honed in on the market. It's a little bit niche. I would kind of not do it yourself, but like go that traditional route where you don't have to go through the agency. You can interact with these people in person, and instead of giving 10 or 20% of your income from the book sales to an agent, pay a lawyer $300 up front. So a little bit of window into the business, but that was my experience.
Okay, that's awesome. So I know you mentioned you had done with an agent, but I guess like you found this publisher after, like on your own after you were
yes.
done with it. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's encouraging. That's good to know. I mean, I'm also hoping to go traditional publishing. Haven't gotten there yet, but I would like. I mean, I would like to. I mean, again, self publishing is a good option for those. For other people too, and I'm open to that. But my plan A is traditional, so that's good. It's working out for you. Where are your books available? Are they like, is this like a national company? Like are they available in bookstores, or is it just kind of on their website, or what?
It's so it's available on Amazon. You can also get it through Barnes and Noble. It's in some Barnes and Noble. Depends on the distribution.
Sure.
So
you said it's a Florida-based company, so maybe closer to you, maybe closer.
Yeah. I think it depends on I think the print comes out of South Carolina. The company's based in Florida. So in terms of the distribution market, I'm not entirely certain. But if you go to a Barnes and Noble, if it's not in the Barnes and Noble, you can just ask them and they can order it for you and sort of pick up that kind of thing. But it's also on Amazon. They made an ebook version. So there's that. You can also go on to an audiobook version on Google Books. So if you Google the Shadow Gospels, it should show up on Google Books. For those who are into like audiobooks. It's pretty quality audiobook. It's not like they had a professional actor come in to narrate or anything, but I've been pretty pleased with the quality, and I've heard from other readers, for those who have listened to it, they really liked it. So Google Books, Amazon. If you go to a Barnes and Noble, if it's not there, ask them at the counter. They should be able to get it for you. But those are kind of the main ones that people are using. Kindle, it's available on Kindle as well.
That's awesome. Does it feel good to have your book like out there where people can find it and everything?
Yeah. It was a little bit crazy.
I bet.
What I thought was going to be like kind of the big moment would be like because the author sends you, or the publisher sends you a couple of author copies before the book goes into full distribution, just so you can like read it over and like just kind of as like you get your own copy. And I thought that would be the big moment for me, where I'd open and be like, oh wow, this thing finally in my hand after so many years. And it wasn't. What is the big thing is when I get a text message from someone who read it, or I see a review, or someone comments on online like, hey, I just picked this up and I'm loving it so far. I read the first 3 chapters, or I finished the book and it was amazing. Like getting that kind of feedback feels a little bit more meaningful for me. I had someone recently who they have a friend who's a little bit in a crisis of faith, and she pulled a line from the book and was like, and kind of gave the theological standpoint behind that, and to kind of like help that person. Like, wow, that's kind of like, that's what it's more about. You know, it's cool to see the book and have it and have people buy it and see it online, all that kind of stuff. But hearing from actual readers and getting feedback from them and hearing how it impacted them or how it taught them something they didn't know, like that's the big win for me.
Oh, yeah, praise the Lord. Do you feel like you've arrived yet as an author, or not quite?
Not really. My
know
life doesn't look a lot different than it did before.
It's a loaded question. I know we all have that dream of like the moment or whatever.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all on the journey, aren't we?
Yeah, I don't know if I feel that way. Like I said, my life doesn't look too different than it did before. It's nice to see that the book is selling. It's nice to see some good reviews piling in. It's nice to get feedback from people. That's kind of the big change.
You're making some income from your books, but not enough to quit your day job yet.
No, eventually that would be ideal. I think all of us
I mean,
do that someday.
That's the dream, right? But yeah.
But life gets in the way most often. But yeah, we'll see how it all pans out. There's, I think for right now, I'm just kind of enjoying like speaking to the readers, like getting feedback from readers and talking to readers.
That's an important step.
Yeah.
You should enjoy that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Awesome. Very good. What have you done for self-promotion or engaging the audience? And I guess part of the question is, since you have a traditional publisher, do they promote for you, or do you have to do a lot of that, or kind of both?
It's kind of both. They do some of the marketing work, but even this is something I learned from when I was working with the agent that I had. Even maybe not the biggest heavy hitters like your Stephen King, George R.R. Martin's, but most authors are doing a lot of the social media work and a lot of the marketing work on their own.
I mean, those guys are big enough. They have people who can do that for them. But
exactly,
these days, I mean, even if a traditional publisher, you got to do at least half. I don't know, but at least a good chunk.
Yeah, you're doing a good chunk of it. So I mean, I've got a website that I need to probably pay a little bit more attention to, but life again gets in the way, and also writing the sequel gets in the way. But you know, distributing things on Twitter, trying to share things with folks, finding people that you kind of like can authentically engage with, and kind of saying like, hey, would you want to check this out? You know, I think another piece of it is, you know, the traditional publishing, or at least in my experience, they provide some like review copies that you can share with people. So I offer those to not a ton of folks, but when I find people that I think would really enjoy it, because a lot of the Amazon stuff, like you have to build up the reviews, like you want to get more reviews, and that's what gets more traffic to your site. So a lot of that, and then I've been really fortunate to have just some close friends that have really evangelized it, and they've kind of shared with their friends. And so I think, a lot of us are hoping for like the viral tweet that gets 1,000 likes and all that kind of stuff. For me, especially being in a little bit more of a niche market, a lot of it's about authentic connection, and it's about word of mouth.
Again, it's usually not one single moment. I mean, it can be, but it's usually a lot of little things rather than one big thing.
Yeah, you're building over time. And so like for me, because the book is so faith-based, like I have conversations with my pastors about it. I give them a copy. There's people at my church that I just engage with, and when they ask, I try not to shove things down people's throats. But when they ask, like I engage with them, like, oh, what do you like to do? Like, this is one thing that I like to do. It's my passion project. And so they automatically are very interested in it, and just like creating those friendships and kind of like allowing those people to spread word of mouth about it, because they're already supportive of you and you already have a relationship with them. It feels more organic than being like, here's a link, click my link. Like, that's it's hard and it's hollow and it's frustrating to go about it that way.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. Yeah, it is. I'm glad you can make that kind of, I guess you could say grassroots maybe, but it's kind of it's a personal connection, which I think is what all of us want at some level. So
Right, exactly.
okay, great. Well, yeah, what do you have in the works currently or in the future? I know you've talked about a sequel. What else is coming out, or are you still working on?
Yeah, so Chronicles of Yeshu, which is kind of like it's a very high fantasy. So it's kind of like your Lord of the Rings, your Chronicles of Narnia. I mentioned those are kind of the inspirations behind those, but it's kind of my ode to Lewis and Tolkien. It's also it's pretty intense. It's got some dark fantasy elements in it. It follows a character, Willis, who is opposing this group called the Triad, which is kind of this ruling trio of demons. And so I can maybe share a link to that or something like that, but that's going to be coming out towards the end of the year. I am working on the Shadow, same publisher.
Different series, but same publisher.
Yeah. So I'm also working on the Shadow Gospel sequel, which is going to be titled The Shadow Gospels Fall of Man, which is I kind of look at it as like my Empire Strikes Back, my Avengers Infinity War, where things hit the fan pretty quickly. So it's pretty intense, but that's going to be the sequel. I'm drafting that right now. And those are really the main two that I'm working on right now.
Is it going to be a trilogy or longer than that, you think?
I think it's going to be longer. I'd originally looked at like 7 books. And when I was working with the agent, this is another like business of publishing nugget. Most publishers in the traditional route, they're not looking for series, they're looking for kind of standalones or like 1 or 2. So I originally had this idea. I was like, well, I originally had 7 planned, and then when I was working with the agent, I brought it down to like, oh, I have to do it in like 1 or 2 books, which became really not feasible. And with this group, they're more open to series, and so I'm saying between 5 and 7. It depends.
I mean, some people start out with just 2 or 3, and if it's successful enough and they want more, then you can always do more.
Exactly.
So, who knows? Yeah, that's cool. But yeah, I mean, I know for some of us, a 7-book series is a lot to commit to. But I mean, even in reading, but yeah, it's cool you have the ambition, and I'm glad you're doing it. And there is an audience for it. I mean, I know sometimes it's hard to find, but like, everyone these days can find their audience, and like it's out there. So
for sure.
Well, I think we're nearing the end of our time. So, I mean, thank you again for being here. Tell us, where can people follow you and your work online? I know you're on Twitter, Facebook, you said LinkedIn. Where are you most actively engaging and promoting and such?
Twitter is usually where I spend most of my time, but if you want to engage with me on Facebook, I have a Facebook page. And I also am on Twitter at Matt D. Luke, L-U-K-E.
Matt D. Luke.
Yep. So if you guys, I mean, Twitter's I'll usually just run through and check that. So I'm also like pretty responsive to people that are readers. So feel free to DM me, feel free to
find you on Twitter. Yeah,
exactly. So ask me questions if there's anything I didn't touch on that you want to learn about, whether it's about the book or even if you're looking for someone just to beta read or ask for feedback on your manuscript or talk about the business process, whatever that is. I'm pretty open to all that stuff. So Twitter is usually the best spot for that. So feel free to reach out to me there.
Yeah, and you have Facebook. You said this Matt D. Lucas, is that right? Or Matt, or is it Matt Lucas author?
That's the Facebook page. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Well, anything else you want to say to the people watching at home before we start signing off?
No, just thank you guys for listening and for some of the questions. It's been great having this conversation. Sam, I appreciate you putting this on.
Absolutely.
If you get a chance to check out the Shadow Gospels, I would love to hear from you. I'd love to get your feedback on it and anything like that. And if it was great, let me know. If there's something you didn't like, let me know. And if you're a writer and you're looking to learn a little bit more, feel free to reach out. I'm always open to those types of conversations. I love helping people. I know this journey is difficult. It's very difficult for me. Sam mentioned it's difficult for him. It's difficult for everybody. So if you need any perspective, feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. For everyone watching at home, remember to like my page, Samuel N. Harris, for future discussions and content for writers, or you can sign up for my mailing list at the Clippermaker link in the description there. When you sign up, you'll get a free sample of Fractured Heroes, a few of my favorite scenes that I think you'll enjoy, which is my story. And go check out Matt's work too. He's a new author, or newish, and also a new dad. He needs your support, so go check out his work. Buy a copy of the Shadow Gospels. He really sold it. Like I want to read the rest of it now. So go check that out. Support your up and coming authors. But anyway, thank you everyone for watching today. Thank you, Matt, for being here with us, and have a great weekend and keep writing all.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Yep. Bye.